The courtroom was packed, but silent enough to hear the hum of the air conditioner. A young man, no older than 18, stood at the defendant's table, his hands loosely clasped, his expression unreadable. His black hoodie looked out of place among the sea of suits and ties, and his sneakers squeaked faintly as he shifted his stance. The judge, a man with greying hair and a deep furrow between his brows, stared down at him over the rim of his glasses. "Son," the judge began, his voice carrying a trace of amusement that made the bailiff smirk, "do you even understand where you are right now? This isn't a video game. This is a courtroom, and you are in a lot of trouble." The teenager didn't flinch. He looked at the judge as if he was weighing something. "I understand perfectly," he said calmly, his tone even and polite, but it carried a strange confidence that made a few people in the gallery glance at each other. The judge chuckled without humor. "Perfectly? You were caught trespassing in a government building after hours. That's not some little prank. You could face real jail time." "I'm aware," the young man replied. His voice was still measured, but there was a sharpness beneath it, as though every word was chosen carefully. The prosecutor, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s, leaned forward. "For your honor, if I may, the defendant's age should not overshadow the fact that this is a serious offense. He's clearly here without counsel, which speaks to his recklessness." The judge turned back to the boy. "Where is your lawyer, son? Or did you think you could just talk your way out of this?" That's when the boy smiled faintly. "I didn't hire a lawyer, Your Honor. I'm representing myself." A ripple of quiet laughter spread through the courtroom. The judge's brows lifted and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Represent yourself? You must be joking." "I'm not." "You have no legal training," the judge said firmly. "This is absurd. You can't just—" "With all due respect," the boy interrupted, his voice still polite but laced with something unshakable, "I can. The Sixth Amendment grants me the right to self-representation, and I believe I can present my own defense." The judge leaned back in his chair, studying him. "Kid, I've seen people twice your age with law degrees get torn apart in this courtroom. You have no idea what you're walking into." "I think I do," the boy said quietly. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably. A woman in the gallery, perhaps the boy's mother, clasped her hands tightly. The judge sighed. "Fine, you want to embarrass yourself, go ahead, but don't expect me to go easy on you." The prosecutor smirked as he gathered his notes. This should be quick. The trial began, and the prosecutor wasted no time. "Your Honor, the state will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this young man was caught unlawfully inside the restricted records wing of the municipal building at 10:47 p.m. The security footage is clear. The arresting officer's report is detailed. The facts are simple. He broke the law." The boy stood still, listening intently. When the prosecutor finished, the judge turned to him. "Your opening statement?" The boy stepped forward, his hands steady. "Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution says the facts are simple, I agree, but perhaps not in the way they expect. This case is not about trespassing. It's about why I was there, what I was looking for, and what the law actually says about it. Over the next few hours, I will show that the state's case relies on assumptions, not facts, and I will prove that my actions, while unusual, were entirely legal." The courtroom shifted uneasily. The prosecutor's first witness was the security guard who had discovered the boy in the building. "He was there, plain as day," the guard said. "Camera caught him, I caught him, and he didn't even run." The boy stood for cross-examination. "Sir," he began, "how long have you worked as a security guard?" 10 years. "And in that time, have you ever seen the public allowed into that records wing during the day?" "No, it's restricted." "Restricted to who?" "Only authorized personnel." The boy nodded. "And is there a written policy defining authorized personnel?" The guard frowned. I guess. I've never read it." "So you don't actually know who qualifies as authorized under the building's own rules?" The prosecutor objected. "Relevance?" The judge sighed. "Overruled, for now. Continue." The boy pressed on. "One last question. When you found me, did I have any tools, weapons, or signs of forced entry?" "No." "So it's possible I entered legally without breaking anything, correct?" The guard hesitated. "I suppose so." A murmur went through the room. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. By the time the boy finished cross-examining the guard, a small crack had appeared in the prosecution's narrative. But the prosecutor still had the footage, and when it played, the boy's figure was clear, slipping through the building's side door. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Care to explain that, son?" "Yes, Your Honor, but not yet." The second witness, the arresting officer, described finding the boy calmly browsing a filing cabinet. He said he was looking for proof, whatever that meant. When it was his turn again, the boy's questions were surgical. "Officer, did you ask me for identification?" "Yes." "And did I give it to you?" "Yes." "A driver's license?" "And did that license show I was a legal adult?" "Yes." "Did you run my name?" "Yes." "Clean record." The boy paused. "So, to your knowledge, I had no criminal history, no outstanding warrants, and no stolen property in my possession?" "That's correct." The boy nodded, then looked at the judge. "Interesting, isn't it? I was arrested for being in a place I had every legal right to enter." "Objection," the prosecutor barked. "Sustained," the judge said quickly, but his expression was no longer amused. It was curious. As the day wore on, the boy's calm demeanor began to rattle the prosecution. Every question he asked seemed to poke a hole in their certainty. Every point he made was backed by a legal citation that he recited from memory without notes. During a recess, the judge called him over quietly. "Where did you learn to do this?" The boy looked him in the eye. "I study, a lot." The judge studied him for a long moment, but said nothing. When the trial resumed, the boy finally addressed the security footage. "The side door I entered through was unlocked because the maintenance staff had just left. The city's own municipal code states that any publicly funded building must provide access to public records during posted hours, and the records wing is part of that building. I was there to retrieve documents proving a property rights violation that affected dozens of families. Documents the city had quietly removed from public view. I was not trespassing. I was exercising my right as a citizen to access public records." The gallery erupted in whispers. The prosecutor's face tightened. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" The boy took a breath, ready to call his next witness, a retired clerk who knew about the hidden records. But before he could, the prosecutor leaned over to his assistant, muttering something sharp. The tension was now thick enough to cut, and yet somewhere beneath it all there was a shift. People were no longer seeing him as just a kid. The boy adjusted the microphone as the retired clerk, an elderly man with kind eyes and a worn leather briefcase, took the stand. "Sir," the boy began, "how long did you work in the municipal buildings records department?" 32 years, the clerk replied. "And during those years were the property records stored in the wing where I was found?" "Yes, they always were." The boy's tone softened. "Can you tell the court what happened to those records 2 months ago?" The clerk shifted uneasily. "They disappeared from the public index. No notice, no explanation. I found out later they'd been moved to a locked cabinet in the restricted section. I was told not to mention it to anyone." The prosecutor sprang up. "Objection! Hearsay!" The judge studied the clerk for a long moment, then shook his head. "Overruled. I want to hear this." The clerk continued. "Those records showed that the city had improperly claimed ownership of land that belonged to local families. If those families lost their land, they'd lose their homes. I tried to raise the issue internally. I was ignored." The boy's voice was steady, but his eyes shone with something deeper, determination, maybe even anger. "Why did you tell me where to find them?" "Because you asked the right questions, and because I knew you wouldn't stop until you had the truth." The gallery went silent. The boy turned to the judge. "Your Honor, these are the documents I retrieved the night I was arrested." He lifted a folder from the defense table and handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the bench. The judge flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each turn. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Your Honor, the defendant still violated—" The judge raised a hand sharply. "Quiet." He looked down at the boy. "You came into this courtroom in a hoodie and sneakers, without a lawyer, without any sign of formal training. Everyone in this room, including me, thought you were just a foolish kid who didn't know what he was doing. But this is thorough legal work. These statutes, these precedents, you've cited them correctly. You've prepared a case that many seasoned attorneys couldn't pull off." The boy's expression didn't change. "I'm not here to impress anyone, Your Honor. I'm here because people were about to lose everything. People who didn't have the resources or the knowledge to fight back. If I had gone through the official channels, the truth would have been buried before anyone saw it." The judge leaned back, studying him with a mix of disbelief and admiration. "How old are you?" 18. "And you've studied the law. How?" "In my free time," the boy said simply. "I read case law, legal textbooks, and municipal codes. Every night, for years." A long pause filled the room. Then the judge set down the file. "Case dismissed." The prosecutor started to protest, but the judge's voice was firm. Not only was this young man's presence in the building lawful under the city's own ordinances, but his actions prevented a gross miscarriage of justice. The court owes him thanks, not a conviction. The boy gave a small nod. No smile, no triumphant gesture, just a quiet exhale. As the gavel fell, the gallery erupted in applause. People the boy had never met before were looking at him with awe. The elderly clerk was wiping his eyes. Even the bailiff gave the boy a subtle nod as he passed. The judge called after him. "Son," the boy turned. "Don't waste this gift. The law needs people like you." The boy's lips curved in the faintest smile. "I won't." He stepped out into the hallway, the noise of the courtroom fading behind him. He pulled his hood up and walked into the cool afternoon air, blending back into the city like just another kid on the street. But inside, he knew something had changed, not for him, but for the people whose homes would now be safe. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about fame or money or even recognition. They're about quietly doing what's right, even when the world thinks you can't. Because the truth is, sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. Never underestimate someone just because of how they look. You might be standing in front of a genius in disguise. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Black Saga for more powerful and inspiring videos.